there are some pain points, such as addiction, or body dysmorphia.
There's a lot of this need to prove ourselves, to prove that I'm proud of my sexuality. We can make our own script in terms of who we want to be and how we define ourselves.
Hello, welcome to the Happy Insights podcast. My name is Happy Ali. Today we have a rainbow episode, which means a pride episode because it is June, it's Pride Month. So I have a special guest here, uh, Elian Vale. Did I say that right?
You did, yes.
He is a mentor and a guide for high performing gay men ready to live beyond perfection and reconnect with their truth. Through deep insight and compassionate presence, he helps men break free from the pressures of body image, ambition, and addictive cycles, guiding them back to authenticity, inner connection, and real freedom. His work is a path to presence, not performance, and to a pride that's rooted in truth, not applause. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I really wanted to do this, and the reason I wanted to do this was because as a gay person and witnessing a lot of other gay people, I noticed there are some things that we do celebrate and we do know how to have a good time, but we have some pain points. There are some issues in the gay community that seems to be spread all across the gay community, such as addiction, such as
Mm.
ambition or body image or body dysmorphia, so many things. And
Mm.
I wanted to have somebody who's an expert on the show talk about this stuff. And I know a lot of the women on my show will also resonate with this because women do have body dysmorphia as well and other issues that gay men do because, we're human and women are always trying to make themselves look prettier and more appealing and to men. And so are gay men. So I think that this will resonate with everyone, and you also get an insight into the gay community. So, can you tell me about your process? Like, how did you end up here? How did you end up doing here? What led you to this mission?
Yeah, so this mission really came from my own lived experience as a gay man and through living the challenges and coming on the other side of what it means to overcome these challenges. I mean, you speak to what body dysmorphia, what it means to be ambitious in the gay community, what it means to have addiction in the gay community. And all of those I've experienced and I've also overcome in a way where I've been able to find peace of mind, clarity, and groundedness in my life. So my work is my own embodiment of what it means to be fully expressed in that way.
And that's what made you become a coach.
Yeah, I really, when you find yourself in those challenges, and it really comes down to it when you're in that place where, so for body dysmorphia, for example, which is one of the common ones I see, in a lot of the men that I work with, and so rampant in the gay scene, it is extremely hard to feel good about yourself and like you belong in the world and like you belong with the people in your community when you don't feel comfortable in your own skin. So when you can find someone that understands that and that also has overcome that, it changes everything. It gives you hope as well as it gives you a place to go to beyond where you currently are.
I'm gonna just tease you right now. Do you think you don't have body dysmorphia now, or is it like in a milder way, or is it gone?
I don't have body dysmorphia. No, I don't have body dysmorphia.
That's awesome. And but you did
Yeah.
have it at once.
Oh yeah, I struggled with body dysmorphia for most of my life. I remember when I was a little kid and I used to compare myself to the models I would see in the magazines or I would look at all of the men around me growing up that had the fit bodies, and I never felt like I belonged. And for most of my life, even well into my adult years, a lot of what I was doing obsessively with fitness and with athletics, which I've been in all kinds of athletic sports. I've done fitness modeling myself, and so I'm well versed in that particular arena. But a lot of it was coming from that underlying feeling of I'm not good enough. I need to keep doing more because I just need to drive harder because who I am as I am right now isn't good enough.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
We're gonna get back into body dysmorphia a little bit more, but before we get into the actual topic of body dysmorphia, you've said that real pride isn't about being louder, it's about being more true. What does true pride feel like in your body, in your spirit, when you're feeling fully aligned?
Yeah, real true pride for me is being able to own every part of you in a way where there's no hiding anymore. And there's no need to prove yourself when it comes to what your truth is. And that's where I see a lot of the challenge when it comes to owning your truth in the gay community. There's a lot of this need to prove ourselves because of one reason or another, whether it is because we had to deal with rejection growing up or isolation for our sexuality. And so there's a lot of this other extreme where there's a need to be, well, I'm gay and I'm so prideful about it. Therefore, let me showcase this in this really extreme way to prove that I'm proud of my sexuality. But when it comes down to it, when you're true to yourself and you're true to the fullness of yourself beyond being gay, beyond loving yourself for whether you like men, whether you're someone who likes to cook, whether you're someone who is more of a bottom, whether it doesn't, any of those things. There's not a need to prove that, as it's more just this is who I am, this is what I do when I do it. There's no longer a need to go out to the world and to say, "Hey, let me shout this at you because I need you to believe this." You no longer need to shout that at the world anymore because you're already embodying it in a way where you're living it.
I know, well, low self-confidence leads people to find something and shout about it if they feel confident about it, even whether it's your clothes or if you're just really pretty as a straight or gay person, some people will showcase that, make it so big that the rest of their flaws will be overlooked. So I think
Sure.
sometimes like over just doing everything a little too much will make it more of like a mask that you can
It is it is a
hide
mask.
behind.
Yeah, and you can see underneath it too that there's someone who desperately wants to be seen beyond what they're putting out there. And it's not anything to do with the individual, as a lot of it has to do with the culture itself. That's why I always draw these issues back to the community at large. So when it comes to body dysmorphia, that is very much a challenge in the gay community. No gay person is immune from that. Because if you are gay, you have dealt with that or you're dealing with that at some point of your life. It's just a fact of coming out. It's a fact of being a part of the community. There is so much hyper focus on it that it's impossible not to feel the pressure of it. So when you see people acting from that place, whether it is, you see the hyper focus on going to the gym and you see the hyper focus on looking really fit in the suit and all of the focus now on social media, you can have more empathy and compassion for people when you understand underneath it that really people want to belong. They want to feel like they're desired by others. They want to feel they're worthy of being seen by others as well in the community. And so it's not so much an individual thing as it's a community thing.
Yeah, and to explain to my non-gay community or people that are listening to my non-gay audience, in the gay community, especially in the mainstream gay community, you have to look pretty. And if you don't look pretty, you don't get looked at, you don't get picked up by anyone. You basically go, it's just a whole nother world. So, and if you are not part of the pretty community, You see all these super duper duper hot men, and that puts on a whole layer of, shame. I'm not good enough. I wish I looked like them. I wish I was taller. I wish I was whiter. I wish I was, had more abs. I wish I was lean. And just some sort of self-pity that comes. Now, there are people out there that don't have these issues, that are very confident, that are very comfortable in their skin. And I just want to say respect to all those people. We love you. Thank you for being a great part of our scene. But unfortunately, a large portion of gay men, if you go to, let's say, a circuit party, a white party, or a big party that gay men throw and everyone's shirtless, everybody looks like they're models, at least from the neck to their waist. Doesn't matter what their face looks like. But there is a lot of face augmentation. But to make sure that you look like what you're going to look like, what you're supposed to look like. So I
Mhm.
just had to clear that up for the people who weren't really familiar with the gay community. And that's why gay people always look so good, because they're always trying to look their best.
Yeah, it's true. And I see behind that too. You see a lot of where that comes from. You mentioned earlier the insecurity with that with a lot of gay men. And a lot of it, it's not to say that all of it does, but a lot of it does come from insecurity. And I've seen this in the men that I work with and in the gay community at large too, that a lot of gay men don't do these things because they actually care about looking good, but it's more from this underlying need of if I don't do these things, I won't be accepted. I won't belong in the group and I won't get to go to the party. And it's not necessarily from this wholesome place of, I want to look good because this makes me feel good. Which, hey, there's nothing wrong here. Like everything we're talking about here, by all means, if you want to get the Botox, get the Botox. If you want six-pack abs, great. My work, the work I draw back to with the men that I work with is always just look at why you're doing what you're doing. Are you doing it because you want to better yourself, because you feel great about your life and this is going to give you something, or is there something else here at play? And that's what matters at the end of the day.
You said something interesting. You said the body isn't a home, it's a performance.
Yeah.
That was pretty interesting. I hadn't
Yeah.
heard it put like that before.
Yeah, and it's not just with the ways that gay men manicure themselves in terms of their appearance, but it's also with their careers as well. Because a lot of the men that I work with are very successful in their career. They've got, very on paper, the career you would want, they've got the home you would want, they've got the life that you would want, yet inside they feel disconnected. And it's because a lot of it is a performance by gay men that they put on so that they can feel accepted by the people in their lives. And so a lot of gay men I've seen get to this point where they achieve the body or they achieve the success that they wanted, and they still feel this emptiness or they still feel this disconnection, only to realize that why they were doing it wasn't coming from this place internally of feeling at home with themselves, but rather it was coming from this place of doing everything so other people could accept them.
So right now we're going over the pain points and the issues, and I'm hoping at the very end you have some solutions for us, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll get there. We're gonna keep people in suspense. We want to tell you what it is that we're talking about and what are the main pain points. And I've talked about it before. I usually do one queer episode a year because I know y'all a bunch of women watching right now and you're over 40 or 50 and the gay world isn't necessarily your thing, but I know you're interested. And I hope that this episode finds some gay audience that really could benefit from it because I always say, gay people don't have parents the same way straight people have parents. Gay people, um, don't have a role model when they're growing up. Straight people have their mother or their father, depending on if they're a boy or a girl, and they get to model their behavior after their mother or father. Gay people, if they're accepted by their family, which more and more people are accepted by their family now in these current generations, these younger generations where they have coming out parties and things like that at home,
Mhm.
it's different, but still, there's no father figure that will help them, teach them how to be as an adult. And a lot of that, I think, is an issue. And that's how the self-confidence comes into play or the lack of self-confidence, because you go out in the world and you're basically are being trained by other 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds on how to behave. And they've learned their behavior based on what they've seen at the clubs or on now there's YouTube and all this stuff or Instagram. But basically, I met a lot of people that they were like, I wish you were the first one that I met when I came out because I'm more confident on the inside and I tend to just not rely so much on what other gays rely on. So I've noticed
Yeah.
that's the thing. And I wonder if that's why we have a huge age gap in a lot of our relationships. So there's a lot of like younger boys who date older men.
Hmm.
It's a lot. It's very prevalent in our community. It's either if they're young, they're all pretty boys. There's all sorts, but we do have a big um, intergenerational relationship that's very common. Do you agree?
Sure. No, it is. What I would say to that is, especially with the younger generation, they're much more progressive when it comes to being open-minded to defining the relationships that they're interested in, whether it is with older men, whether it is interracial, whether it is, polyamory, whether it is, non-commitment of some form. There's much more open-mindedness. But with that, there's also, there's an extreme too that I've noticed of, there's always challenges with that too that comes with that. But it is interesting to see, and that's more just indicative of our current, political climate, I would say, where we've done so much work. Thank you to your generation and to generations before us, where, there is much more of an acceptance, you can go out and you're not, worried about, being gay and, being hazed anymore per se. In most places, there are still some places, but it's not as much of a thing anymore. So there is so much work that has been done to accept the gay community, and it's a beautiful thing. And you can see that in the younger generation. I think it's amazing. I think I'm all for people, being able to define their life and what works for them and how, how it is for them. At the end of the day, what does matter though is that someone does feel safe enough to be able to express that, and that they're leading their lives in a way where it's for their benefit and not because they're doing something because they're looking to be accepted by, my parents, or like you mentioned, like by some father figure they never had, but they're doing it because it's genuinely what makes them happy, or it's true to who they are.
Yeah, as I get older, the people that are interested in me keep getting younger and younger and younger and younger. Uh,
Yeah,
it's very fascinating. Um, and well, I get to learn the lingo and they get to learn about pop culture from back in the day. I tell
sure.
them, it's not actually my generation so much, although we were out there fighting, but it was pop stars like Madonna who literally exposed the world to the
Completely.
gays so I
Yeah.
always when young gays are like, oh, Madonna, she's a hag. And I'm like, she's one of the reasons you're able to go out in those little
She did so
G-strings.
much. Yes, no, Madonna did so much work for the gay scene, beyond that. There's so much respect for her. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
I am like embodied her growing up, so I had a lot of
Okay.
confidence because she was like, we don't change anything about ourselves. We just are who we are. So I didn't have the issues, but I also wasn't part of the gay community. And as soon as I became a part of the
Yeah.
gay community in my
Yeah.
30s, and I
Okay.
started working out and I started just looking better, I
Yeah.
started getting a lot of the complexes like the body
Okay.
dysmorphia and all
Yeah.
that stuff. So as soon as I
Right.
went into the gay community, all those issues came up. And
Right.
it was like, oh, well, here we have body dysmorphia now. You can never
Mm.
be good enough. Although I wasn't as hard on myself because I love dessert, but I was still, still had to make sure my waist was, 30 or under at all times. A shadow of my abs were always showing. So that was part of the thing. And how do you overcome that? How do you overcome body
Yeah.
dysmorphia when you've had it for so long? And it
Yeah.
means so much. Like people still want to go have sex, and they know that there is a huge scale. Like Donald Trump says she's a 7 or she's a 9 or she's a 3. We
Mm.
have the same thing. We're the one of the most lookist, I don't know, one of the most racist, prejudiced community ever, and we're the one that usually is we're a minority. We shouldn't have this.
We are minority. So this is the way I would pose it because you don't overcome it. You see it for what it is. When you are able to find enough self-respect in yourself. So a lot of the work I do, it's somatic work. It's getting into your body and it's being able to hold yourself, especially in the times when you're feeling that body dysmorphia. Because what is body dysmorphia at the end of the day? It's feelings in yourself of inadequacy, of not feeling good enough, comparing yourself to other people, and you by default want to avoid or ignore those feelings because you're telling yourself that compared to so and so out there, I'm not matching up good enough. But so really, that's not something you overcome as you realize, wait a second, I'm telling myself that I'm not good enough right now, or I'm telling myself compared to this person, I'm not. But is that actually true? Am I actually inside not good enough right now? Like, get inside your body, feel that. Is it actually true? Like, be honest. No, it's never true. But we believe those lies we tell ourselves because we go off the script that we're given by the community. And that's where the work is because it's more about, yes, there are challenges in the community, but the thing that we can do about it is we can make our own script in terms of who we want to be and how we define ourselves. And that's way more empowering than anything we learn from anyone else or from any community we belong to.
And a great way to know if your script is in alignment with your soul and what your inner being thinks of you is to see how you feel when you're writing that script. So if you're saying, I'm not good as other people, is that making you feel good or bad? And if it's making you feel bad, that means there's discord with your higher self or who you
Mm.
really are spiritually. So when you tell a story and it doesn't feel good, it just means you're telling the wrong story. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. And I wanted to share that because that's one of the ways that I've overcome my very, very critical dialogue that was in my head for so many years regarding my appearance. I was Middle Eastern, um, like a little shy of 5'9", uh, just different than everybody else, and in a very white community. And and they were all like 6'1", 6'4", 6'3", it's like all these super tall people. And I was like this, I was not one of them. But for some reason, my personality or my face got me in the door. So I got to hang out with everybody. But at the same time, there was that level of like comparison. But then I would hear a lot of those people talk and there wasn't an intelligent word out of their mouths because all they were hyper focused on was like very, very, I don't know, what I didn't consider important conversations and very superficial things because all
Mm.
they focus on, I'm not saying those people are, there's anything wrong with them, but they're so focused on the physical aspect that there was not enough time to feed the mind. And if I said, do you read a book? They're like, no, I don't have time yet. They had 2.5 hours to spend at the gym. Um, It's interesting. I'm one of those gays that's very heteronormative. I always live close enough to the gay town, well, the gay West Hollywood, but not too far, but not too close because it's not healthy for my mind and my mental health when I'm in it too long. Because
Mm.
I all of a sudden like just start questioning things. Now, this is before I had some done some inner work, and now I've learned that my inner dialogue, if it's not positive, it's just some other aspect of me, my ego talking, and I don't even pay attention to it. Because I realize if you let that thing talk, the inner critic, it'll just keep messing with you forever and ever and ever. And I don't listen to it anymore. If you want to tell me I'm not good enough, I just give myself or that aspect of myself the finger because and that's for everyone. It's just not for gay people. It's just literally like if any part of you says you are not good enough or you can't do this, you tell it to fuck off. That's my that's my
I like it. I like it.
the way
I
that I
like what you said too about you said it earlier too, and you said it here now too, how you've separated yourself from the gay scene and how you keep yourself separate and how it gives you your sense of sanity and some like keeping your ego in check. And that's so smart because that's what I recommend to my clients as well too. Part of the solution here is that you need to have an identity outside of your sexuality. There needs to be part of who you are that isn't just purely gay. It's not just I'm a gay man who goes to gay events, who does gay parties, who hooks up, who does whatever it is that means to be a gay man nowadays. And therefore, you become everything it means to be gay, and there's nothing beyond you. There's the solution is so simple that so many gay men miss it, but you've clearly embodied it so well for yourself because you have all of these other practices for yourself that keep you in check, so you can embody this.
and I do have to say it does cause a little bit of isolation because when you are in a crowded party with a lot of gays, it makes me, I have the conversations with people. I'm very social, but I'm quick to like walk away from the conversation or I don't resonate with people and I read energy and I'm like, no. So I feel a little isolated
Hmm.
sometimes. And I have this sense of I don't belong anywhere. Yet when I'm with my spiritual community, gay or straight, I feel so at home. So I remind myself, no, 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 that gay community you don't belong to. But when you go to the spiritual community, no matter how many gays are in there, you are having wonderful conversations and everything's amazing. So it's not that you don't belong with the gays, you just don't belong with mainstream gays. So I have to remind myself that.
Mm. And I think it's also interesting because it's also, talking about a lot of the challenge it is to be a gay man nowadays and to feel accepted. So many men don't feel like they can talk about these issues. So many men don't feel like they can talk about how they don't feel good enough in their body, how they don't feel like they match up against everyone out there. And so they go to, these parties or to these events and they feel this inside when the reality of the situation is everyone feels that way. Everyone does. Everyone does. They all do. It's just part of it. It's not good or bad. It just is. It just is. And so when you have that understanding, it takes the edge off. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, another thing that takes the edge off is the substances and substance abuse. I
Ah.
remember being 16 or 15, and I remember there were these gay people that owned a tanning salon above where I used to work. And I went up there one time, and one of them just said, "Here, sniff this," and I'm like, "What is it?" They're like, "Just sniff it."
Mm.
And then I was just starting my rebellion. And I said, okay, fine, I'll sniff it. And then I said, what is it though? They're like, it's meth. And I'm like, holy fuck.
Oh.
And I was up for 2 days and I hated it so much that I didn't do it again for years later. But um, I know, a lot of people, they get involved in the gay community and then they are told it's time to go to this party. And then a bag pops up and then rainbow of drugs show up with a trail mix. Now there's a trail mix.
Mm.
Um, and they just shove it up your nose or put it up your whatever. And it's an ongoing thing. And it's like, it's a system now. I'm witnessing it. We have the G gays, which don't drink alcohol and have the biggest abs. And then we have the tweaker gays, which are the crystal meth heads. And then we have the K gays, which are the new species. And we have so many, we have a variety. And then the
Yeah.
rest are coke gays. And all of them converge in the bathrooms, and it's like a very bond a very interesting scene because they bond.
It
Drug
is. It
bonding
does
is
look into
very
it.
interesting.
It does. Yeah.
I did like drug bonding when I was doing some of that stuff.
Well, I mean, clearly everyone does everything for a reason. You do drugs for a reason. I'm not here advocating for drugs, mind you,
I'm
but
not either.
but clearly people do it for a reason. You know, there is a sense of freedom and there's a sense of aliveness that you feel when you do that. And I mean, as someone who has done this in the past and recreated in the past with, you know, with other gaming, I understand this as well, you know, and you see this, and what I've seen in this too is a lot for a lot of gay men, especially, it's tied with this feeling that I am free to express myself however I want. And therefore, it's an act of rebellion to be able to say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this out in the open with these people at this party. And you know, it's this feeling of no one's going to hold me back, you know. But what I've also noticed is, you know, with every high, there's always a low. You know, you can't experience one extreme without the other. And most men ignore the low. They want to experience the high without, you know, without having to face the repercussion of the low. And that's where it's important to understand at the end of the day, like, why are you doing what you're doing? Are you doing it because you're you're not feeling something in your life that, you know, if there were other ways to be able to manage that, we could help that better? Or is this an escape for you that you're hoping is going to give you something? But in the end, if you were to look, the low is actually costing you quite a bit if you were actually looking at it, you know?
Yeah, and we're centered around the party scene. So you need energy. You need to
Yeah,
have a particular high to be able to tolerate some of that music. Circuit House is not one
the
of my
circuit,
favorite.
yeah.
But there are certain things that, you know, to be part of the culture, you kind of do need to have the aids that will help you, the little helpers. But unfortunately, a lot of times those little helpers become routine, and before you know it, you're addicted, and you have to
Yeah,
check into rehab. If and I've lost a lot of people to drugs,
yeah.
in the gay community, because we
Mm,
always know, like, so and so died, they were 30 something. You know, it was either drugs or suicide, and usually the suicide is related to drugs. And not always, but a lot of times in my outer circles. Um, yeah, well, we all know, but to belong is really the thing. Community, sense of community, and what others do, you do.
yeah, it's true. You know, I've seen it. It's a very mindless thing for a lot of men because they do want to belong to the community. And so you start partaking in these things without really thinking about the repercussions of it. And again, to me, there's no shame here. There's no shame in this, but it's noting the costs so that we can make more conscious decisions. Because at the end of the day, you know, what we really want to do is we want to feel good about ourselves. We want to feel good about our lives. And we can feel free about that. We can still be free people who make our own decisions, who feel good about that. And it doesn't have to involve these decisions that risk our health. That's what I always think about at the end of the day. For me, you know, I can go out, I can have a good time at a party without drinking, without doing drugs, and be totally high on my own energy. But that's also because I come from this space too of like, I'm a very goofy, awkward person when I really let loose. And that's just like where I get my energy from. It's just letting myself be all of myself, which is a very awkward, kind of like goofy minded person. And it makes me very excited. And like it's interesting. I get a very similar high to it that I would doing drugs. And that's what I always want to like note for people. It's like if when you're comfortable in your skin, when you do this work that we do in coaching, like you'll get the same feelings that you get when you're high. It's even better. And it lasts longer.
Yeah, because and you look much better in the photos when people are taking photos at 2 a.m. And everyone's like this, and you're like
Right. They're
looking
all
like
cracked out.
really pretty. I love that now because I've partaken in many fun recreational substances for many, many, many years. I used to, and then I
Yeah.
don't anymore.
Yeah.
I drink on occasion, and then I'll go to AA just so I can have a meet group, so I can have a group of, like-minded folks and see their struggles and hear their stories and I get that chip that's like for 7 days so often
Huh.
because drinking I haven't completely quit yet because it's not as destructive for me.
Hmm.
But I had a whole thing with other stuff with ketamine mostly. I didn't really have it with anything else. Um, and to me, it was a harmless thing until it became a really unnecessary habit. And I thought, God, what is this doing for me? It was doing nothing. But it was giving me energy and it was, making me just want to go out and do stuff. But now I like a Red Bull is plenty. I drink one of those and I'm like, woo, I'm having a good time. I'm dancing.
Hmm.
And I'm now more selective with who I have sex with because I don't
Yeah.
have beer goggles on and
Yes.
they look really cracked out. So so I'm like, no thanks, no thanks. So do you think that the whole concept of this huge sex positivity that's happening that wasn't there before and during my generation, because I'm from the AIDS
Hmm.
generation,
Hmm.
is also a part of just this freedom. I'm gonna do whatever I want. There's no limits. Because I meet people
Yeah.
like I met this guy and he was like, "Oh, you have a kid? I have a kid. He's 6 months, 6 weeks old, and he's at home with the nanny. By the way, this is my husband. This is my boyfriend." And then he was trying to pick me up.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
to me, I was like, he's like, "Don't judge."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Don't worry, I won't judge. My
Right.
job is not to judge," but I judged a
Right.
little.
Hey, I draw the line as well. My work, everything I do is about emotional integrity at the end of the day. So for me, I draw a personal line for that where I mean I'm not gonna personally ever condone any kind of relationship beyond anything where it's monogamy because that's my personal flavor, that's my preference. But I think what matters beyond that is more just that there is space in any relationship for emotional reciprocity. So if the person is respecting your feelings, they're advocating for them, they're treating you like a human being, you feel fully cared for, great. I mean, by all means, but what I will say back to your initial point, I do see when it comes to the extreme of this freedom with all of these new forms of, expression with relationships and everything with this. I do see there is a lot of it is coming from a place of emotional detachment more than it's coming from a place of, any kind of fulfillment in that regard. So I think you're right to be cautious there.
It's not for me, to each his own. And I understand, like, you meet someone, you love them so much, but you don't want to restrict your options. But it's like consumerism in sex, like you just want it all
Yeah,
and you want to taste everything. And I totally get it. And I know a couple, they have a very open relationship, they have an extremely loving relationship. It's really healthy and I love it. And then there's people who it's just it's insane. But I'm not one to judge as long as they come from a place of honesty, love, and integrity. But I was just curious what your thoughts were on that.
yeah. At the end of the day, it always comes back to, emotional reciprocity and whether you're able to feel fully respected in that relationship. So if you can feel that and you can voice your feelings and they're heard and they're mirrored back to you, great. That's what matters at the end of the day. I would be curious to see the science behind those types of relationships where there are, like there's like a third and they're bringing in someone because I don't know how much there is currently right now, but
I mean,
it is
there have been swingers in straight relationships for eons.
that. Well, yeah, that's
And men have been cheating forever. And so maybe this is more of an honest version of cheating. You know what I mean? The same behavior, but at least everyone's aware and no one's going to get hurt in the process. Um, so
yeah,
I don't know. You know what? That's why I'm here as a reporter mostly. And I have a little bit of opinion, but I have zero judgment because you don't
Yeah.
know. Time goes by, people change, cultures change, and people have a fit, and then people adapt. Because, even the concept of romantic love is very new. It's only like 100 and something years old. Before that, marriage was a contract. So you married somebody because it would make sense for this family and this family to unite, or you wanted to get a bunch of money for your daughter. So you would give your daughter, and they would give you this much money, and it would help. But it was always a transaction. It wasn't about romantic love. Usually
Hmm.
the parents arranged it, and they would be introducing their son to that pretty girl that, they've known since she was a baby. And that was it. And then I think it was in the late 1800s when the idea of romantic love and the one and all that stuff was romanticized. I know in Shakespeare, of course, we had Romeo and Juliet and all that stuff, but mostly in relationships, it was more of a contract. And I'm sure back then, when romantic love became a thing, there was a backlash. There were people were saying, "Oh my God, what do you think of this thing where people are just falling
Yeah.
in love?" And that's actually how divorce became so common because people were falling in love and getting married, and their marriage was based on love, not based on logistics, So and then back then you married and you died with that same person. And in psychology, I want to add this, they showed that people, even if they had arranged marriage, ended up happier in the long run after they'd spent like 20 years together because they've gone through all the hard stuff, but they got to know each other and they fell in love slowly, even if they weren't attracted to each other in the beginning. And they tend to be happiest towards the end of their marriage. And that was part of one of my psych classes. And I thought that was so fascinating that we don't have that because most people, as soon as it gets really rough, they divorce.
Yeah.
So I already know gays that have been divorced twice, and I'm like, why even get married? So my beef with the gays, and I'm gonna say it, I'm gonna say it, I don't care if you judge me and bash me, is why beg for gay marriage if we're gonna completely rewrite it and make it open gay marriage? So that was my only little
Hmm.
tiny beef. Like, just for those of you
Yeah.
who want to have open marriage, in my mind, I was like, why don't you do domestic partnership? And for those of you who want to get married in the definition of marriage, do that. And then you would have both have the same rights if we could do that.
Hmm.
And that way, this is my partner. It's my, it's just, for me, it rubs me the wrong way when they're like, this is my husband, this is my boyfriend. And for me, it rubs me the wrong way. But then I take a deep breath and I say, shut up. You're not one to judge. Live your life. No one's life outside of you has anything to do with you. And if it bugs you, it means there's something within you that's being activated, and that's your problem.
Yeah. No, I hear you, and I think you bring up a great point between, allowing freedom of expression for other people and what works for you. And that's really the embodiment of all of this at the end of the day. We have it within ourselves to be able to define what works for us. You know what works for you. You know for you that you like monogamy, you like commitment, you like being married to one person, that works for you, and what else doesn't. You know that, and that's great. But you also have the capacity to respect other people for what works for them. And at the end of the day, too, I think there's so much to be gained from that perspective. That we don't have to do something just because, everyone in the gay community has an open relationship, so I need to be in an open relationship, or they're not committed, so I don't need to be committed. You can decide for you what feels right for you. Like you were saying with the work you did with your body being triggered, like, what is my body telling me right now? It's telling me that I don't want to be in an open relationship, or I don't like this. I like being with one person. Great. You know your answer. Someone may get something else. That's beautiful. My answer is not the same as another person's, nor should it be, but that's the point. We live in a free world where everyone has their own ability to be able to think for themselves, to feel for themselves, But the point is that they do think for themselves and they do feel for themselves. And if you're doing that, great. That's what matters. But I want you to think and feel, not just do what someone else is doing, because that's what you think is going to make you be accepted and make you have, validation from the community.
And this applies to every single person from every race, every gender, every sexual orientation that you need to check in and see what's right for you. That's why when I originally thought of making this episode, I had some thoughts that said, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. I'm doing super spiritual episodes. Maybe I shouldn't do this. But something inside me said, you know what? We all have the same problems. Everyone has the same issues. And we're approaching all these issues with a spiritual solution, which is to go within. So I think it applies to everyone. But another thing you mentioned that was new for me, I'd never heard this idea before, that success is often most celebrated. You said that success is often the most celebrated trauma response. How can someone tell the difference between ambition that's soul driven and ambition that's a mask for pain? But before you answer that question, tell me, what does it mean to have to be a celebrated trauma response?
Yeah, so we live in a world that celebrates trauma. I mean, case in point, our whole conversation, surrounding our body and everything it is for a gay man to have sex, that's celebrated. You go on social media and you can see how, in many ways, body dysmorphia is celebrated for gay men. It's celebrated to look a very particular way. It's the same thing with success. It's celebrated to be the person who has the elite job, in the tech company in finance, whatever it is, who's making the big salary that you can go home and your parents respect you and you get all the notoriety and praise, even if inwardly inside it has nothing to do with who you are or what you like or how you want to be in the world. You still get the respect and the praise of people around you. And that's why it's a trauma response, because you get the respect and the praise, but inwardly it eats at your soul.
So they could possibly be not loving their job and just going for the success. Because I know success gives you some
Yeah.
level of pleasure.
Well, so this one hits home for me as well because I've lived through this and I did this especially, it hits especially as a gay man because for me, I grew up in a family where my sexuality wasn't, and I know many gay men feel this, not all, but many gay men grow up in an environment where they're not accepted for the sexuality. Mine was in a religious environment where they were against gay men. And so, and many family members of mine are still part of that religious community. And so I have had this conditioning from that where I've had to overcome it that was, oh, I need to prove to these members in my family that I'm good enough, that I am just as worthy as them, even though they don't accept this part of who I am. And success can become that form of proving yourself of, well, if I can get this job with this title, with this money, then all of a sudden this response of like, I'm not worthy because of my sexuality will go away. It doesn't. I got the job, that I was making really good money at a really good company, and I hated my life. I hated it. And the funny thing about it too is my family, I had the job that my family wanted, and it did not make them accept me anymore for who I was. And it's just because again, like when you come from this space of trying to prove yourself, of trying to put on something, it will never satisfy what actually is going on inside, which was I wasn't actually accepting myself for who I was and being who I was genuinely outside in my work and in anything else. And so it always comes back to that at the end of the day.
I can see that. And I can see the reverse. Like for me, my family was super religious in Iran and they basically kill gay people there. And I was a very authentic individual that loved to spread joy and happiness around wherever I was with family, and everybody liked me as a human being. So when they found out I was gay, the respect they had for me as a human being, being an authentic individual. Because in Iran, not everybody's very authentic. They have like two sides, one you show others and one you have indoors. But I only
Mm.
had one side. So my authenticity won them over more, and they overlooked the gay thing. Whether they didn't talk about it or whether they actually accepted it, it didn't really matter. They wanted me in their homes. They wanted me around. And some were in denial about it because I'm obviously very public about it on social media. And some were very, very welcoming and saying, "Hey, we know you're gay. We love you anyway," you know? So that was one of those things where authenticity won them over. So I think
Mm.
once you've learned to love yourself more, that has a larger impact on others.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I agree. And the more important factor with that too is that you were proud of yourself regardless of what your family thought to begin with, which is what matters before anything else, first and foremost, always. It's you were able to benefit from your family approving of you after showcasing your authenticity, which is amazing. But your ability to be that one side, like you mentioned, really is that's the grand prize at the end of the day, that you get to be who you are wherever you go, whenever you go somewhere.
And that can be isolating sometimes, but also it's very
Sure,
rewarding at the same time. All right, so now we talked about all the bad stuff. I don't want to talk about any more bad stuff. I
sure.
want to talk about solutions and solutions like we talked about some solutions, but
Hmm.
things that really help people or words that really help people
Yeah.
overcome some of this, feel better, or look in the mirror and feel less disgusting, even though they have a six pack. You
Mm.
know, what are your words of wisdom, or what practices or mindset shifts have
Mhm.
helped you personally to make you feel more safe in your body, for example? Let's talk about just the body alone.
Yeah, yeah. So this really is context specific to each individual. So I always recommend someone find what works for them when it comes to getting into your body. So for me specifically, I like playing the piano. So for me, it's something I did when I was a kid. And when I play the piano, I get lost in playing the piano. I can go and I can start playing for hours. And when I'm done, I feel like a new person. It brings me to life. And so one thing that I always recommend is for someone to find something where you can just get lost in that activity because you're fully engrossed. Your body's engrossed, your mind's engrossed, your creativity's engrossed because you just fully lose yourself in that activity. So that's one thing that's so important for every person to have because the more you do that activity, the more it's going to bring you to life, the more that you're going to be energized by that very thing in the way that it's going to give you the feeling that you want to have. So for some, it may be sports. For some, it may be writing. It's so different for every person, but it's important to have something like that.
So how does that help body dysmorphia? Because body dysmorphia usually happens when you're looking in the mirror, when you're putting on your clothes, and the dialogue in your head starts saying, "Oh no, that's
Exactly.
not big enough, good enough." This, I mean, even for me right now, I think I'm like 10 pounds overweight, but I can barely squeeze my arm into this because of my muscles into this thing because my arms are too big because my muscles are too big, you know? Um,
Yeah.
so
So
I still like for me, like in the past, I would have been like, "Oh my God, I'm so fat." But now I've changed my focus to look, you're not fat. You're muscular and you're just, you enjoyed winter. And if you feel like your body's so out of shape, just look at the fact that you can't fit your arms into this thing. And it's not because you're fat, it's because your arms are too big for it. You need to change sizes or whatever.
it's a great point. So look behind it. So when you're talking about body dysmorphia, like you mentioned, it's dialogue in your head. So
Hmm.
when you're caught up in your head, you're caught up with body dysmorphia, you're caught up with thoughts in your head that your body isn't good enough. So you're going to start living in your head versus your body. So the solution is always to get in your body. It doesn't matter what it is, because whatever's going on in here about the body dysmorphia is going to keep you up here. So the solution is always to get down in here. It doesn't matter what it is. So it seems like the body dysmorphia is the issue up here. It's not. The body dysmorphia is lying to you. All this is a script in your head saying, hey, avoid what's going on in your body because you don't want to feel this. So when I play the piano, I'm fully in my body. I'm feeling every muscle in my body. I'm feeling my fingers. I'm feeling all of the creativity flow through me. So the body dysmorphia would not be able to live in me at that moment in time. And the energy and the flow that I get from that is exactly what you want to feel and carry into the rest of your life. So for someone else, that may be, it may be running or it may be cooking or it may be something, but that's what you want to feel over what you're feeling, getting in your head.
So what happens when you stop doing that thing? Wouldn't the body dysmorphia come right back in?
It's not to say that body dysmorphia is always with you, and it's also not to say that you have to do that activity every single time. Body dysmorphia is, again, it's a conditioning of your mind telling you that you need to avoid the present moment. So it's about finding ways to get into your body versus living in your head. So I always recommend, number one, finding something. That's why I bring it back to this at the end of the day, finding something that works for you, that you resonate with, because you're going to want to do it. If you're a creative person that likes to run or that likes to write poetry, you're going to want to do it. You'll do it as often as you want to do it. This is the hard thing with people when it comes to when you go to therapy or you go to some person and you want to get rid of body dysmorphia and they start some program for 10 weeks and they go to some clinic and they don't do any of their habits, but then they come back and they still have the body dysmorphia because they didn't integrate any of it. Because at the end of the day, you're you with your habits and who you are. You want to find things that work for you that you'll integrate because that's who you are. If you're a person who's creative, you want to find things that work for you. You know what I mean? So whenever I'm working with someone, I want to work with the tools that they already have at hand versus trying to bring something in that's going to be more painful for them when we're in a state of wanting to mitigate their pain versus adding more pain on. So it's one thing that I add on. There are mindset techniques and frameworks always. Like the other thing that I always like, whenever you feel the body, just whenever like you feel the thoughts of like I don't like my body, get into your body. Like if you're looking in the mirror and you're looking at your body and you don't like what you look and you want to look away, look at your body. Actually sit in your body and look. There's no way that you're ever going to get rid of those thoughts until you actually sit in the body. It's all a matter again of being able to withstand whatever it is you don't want to withstand.
And that's more somatic work.
Mhm.
Right. So it's different. And I appreciate the somatic approach because it's not usually, I mean, I do some somatic work, but when it comes to this stuff, I teach people more slightly different ways of dealing with things by working with their understanding where their inner dialogue is coming from, that it's not true, it's not real, and really disempowering the inner dialogue and realizing that we come in every shape and size and we go through seasons and really having them absorb that idea until they grasp it. And then so I work with the mind mostly, and you work with the body, which is kind of good because we kind of complement each other in some ways. So I would, but I have found that when I do write or I'm doing something creative, I don't really think about anything else. But to me, that's, then I come back to reality, which is the mirror. And but sometimes the inner dialogue is good. Like my inner dialogue sometimes says, "Hey, you haven't been watching what you're eating. Get your ass in shape." And I respect that too. So not all negative talk is bad. It's
Mhm.
usually when you are at a perfect state and you keep trying harder and harder and harder, that's when true body dysmorphia happens. When you're gained weight and you're out of shape and you can hardly breathe running up the stairs, if a critic in your mind says, "Hey, you need to get in shape," that's not body dysmorphia. in my opinion. That's like something within you saying you got to get yourself back in shape so you can live a long time and be as healthy as you can. And being in shape means different things for different people. It doesn't necessarily mean having abs because having too little of body fat is actually not healthy for you at all. You need to have a good amount of body fat as a person because it serves a purpose. You're not supposed to be so lean that your skin is all you see and muscles. So I do want to say uh, criticism isn't always bad. We have the inner critic for a reason, and we maintenance is always really healthy, you know? And you can't go, and I'm really talking about the extremes of super body positivity with those people that were so fat and they were like, I love the way that I am, and they're dead now. There's like a reel with like all the people that said it and they died. And then on people who are super fit and they think they're small or their arms are too small and they are literally like giants. So those are
Mm.
the people that I like to address the most. And everyone in between, don't listen to me. Listen to him or something. So we talked about that. Substance abuse is a hard one. Come up with a solution for that one. Um, I'm curious what's your answers for this one.
Yeah, so substance abuse, a lot of the time too, I mean, I bring it back to somatic work because a lot of it I find is an inability to feel with what's going on inside. So the more that you can find moments of being able to sit with yourself and get curious, the better for you.
In the
So
discomfort, right? In the discomfort.
in the discomfort,
Yeah.
yeah, because it really comes back to understanding yourself and why you're feeling that way. So for some, that may be a journaling practice that would be helpful, setting aside a time at night where you can think about your day and be honest with yourself. Be like, okay, so where were the hard moments in the day where I felt triggered, and why was that? What thoughts were coming up at that time? And you talk about the inner critic, and that's a separate voice. Being able to see the thoughts that come up is enough. Just being able to say, okay, I was triggered earlier today because this person called me fat. Just being able to see that for what it is enough for someone to be like, yeah, that's not true. I don't, some you don't always need to have to go super deep to understand things, but being able to articulate them is powerful. And so having something in your day where you're able to take a step back, assess the situation, ask yourself what you're feeling about it and why is very powerful. So for me, that's journaling. That could be, again, somatic work it could look like something where you just take a moment to breathe as well. So maybe you just take a few deep breaths in the day. So it could be something in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening where you take some deep breaths. So, but I always encourage adding practices like that more into your day because the more you bring that level of awareness in, the more that when you have the urge to go to whatever it is, whatever substance you have, the more awareness you're going to have about it, which brings power. It's not about shaming why you do what you do. It's about understanding why you do what you do. Because I've found when people understand the why and they can bring space into that, it brings them more ability to be able to cope and move through that as well.
And now I want to give my 2 cents just because what you're talking about and the advice you're giving is really good for somebody who's already sobered up, who is somebody
Yeah,
who has cleaned,
sure.
gotten rid of their habit. But I know some people watching or listening will not have been sober, will not be sober. They will be in the thick of it. And those people I would want to give my advice to because it's really important. I want to say that a lot of times, part of the drug culture brings a sense of community. You have that friend you can call, and there's something about that community that makes it even more enticing. That's one aspect of it. And I just want to let you know, once you become sober, there's also a community there too. Just be community of people who don't do drugs. Then the second thing is when you've been doing drugs long enough, your body has acclimated to the drug inside your body, and your cells have found their equilibrium with the drug in your body, and your habits have become pretty much, permanent. It feels like it's permanent. You just don't have to think about it, and you're driving to your drug dealer's house. So it's really important to know that you need to set a 3-day detox program when you do decide. Like, put yourself away from wherever you are, check in somewhere,
Mhm.
be with a family member. 3 days is how long it takes for the cells. As soon as you stop doing drugs, the cells fall. They lose their equilibrium. So they need the drug. So you feel the heavy duty cravings. So generally in 3 days, you will lose the cravings, physical cravings, not mental. And then you won't feel anxiety or anxious, or you stop shaking and all that stuff. So it takes about 3 days. So I just want to say that. Then you immediately
Mhm.
want to find a community of sober people. That really helps, no matter who the community is. It could be a group of friends, it could be
Yeah.
AA, it could be NA, whatever it is. That way, your sense of community is immediately replenished to where you don't feel that you are alone, and you're not craving that sense of connection. And having a sponsor or something, that helps too. That means you have someone to call at any time and just, do it. But, that's for people who've really decided to quit and really decided that they want the best version of themselves to come through. I wanted to kind of give that version too.
Yeah.
And then once you're out of that phase, then what you're saying is really, really helpful,
It's
because that's
fair.
how you go day by day and kick the cravings and the triggers and slowly work on them. And before you know it, you're sober 10 years and you're teaching somebody else how to be sober.
Yeah, and I would certainly encourage anyone who is thick in the addiction to find an addiction recovery specialist. I'm not someone who, like, I personally wouldn't, like, I don't come to me for something like that. I'm not, that's not my specialty. I'm more versed with people who are, like you mentioned, not needing that specialized level of care. But that's great advice. I learned a lot from that there. Thank you.
And don't come to me either.
Yeah.
No, I've worked with people with addiction, but I think that just going to AA or going somewhere like that is actually really helpful once you're
Yeah.
being sober. Let me see if there's anything else that we haven't covered that we should cover. Can you think of
Yeah.
anything before we
Uh,
wrap up? And I do want to end with like a very positive note, because I want to say that I am proud of the gays for being who they are, having the audacity, the pride, the bravery to be who they are, knowing how much we're losing as gay men or as gay women. We're losing respect of so many people. Religious people think we're going to go to hell. There's so many things that we don't get easily by choosing to be our most authentic self. So I respect each and every person, no matter where they are in their journey, whether they're in the thick of it, whether they're coming out of it, whether they're drugged up and having the best time of their lives. Enjoy it, but know that underneath it all, there's something deeper, and that is your soul, who you are on the inside. And make sure you're not covering that up and letting that shine bright.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I agree. There's so much strength in the gay community. There's so much to acknowledge in terms of what they've gone through, what we continue to go through. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I think there's so much hope for us. There's a lot of people who feel at a loss for the community, like there's not much for us, but that's not what I see at all. There's so much strength and bravery, and every day things continue to get better. It's just a matter of being able to bring visibility to this. Like you mentioned, in your own life, how you've been able to manage your life, in your own way, in the community. You found what works for you. And it's about, everyone finding ways that continue to work for them. And I think the more we talk about these things, it will continue to get better and better. So I'm excited for how things will continue to shape up for us. So.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And I guess the only advice I can give as we wrap up, first of all, thank you so much for joining me
Yeah.
today. Is You are more than a sexual being.
Mm,
Remember that. You are a human being,
yeah.
and there is so much more beauty in you than what your outer self expresses. And sex and your physical body and your status is just a small, small portion of you. The biggest part of you is what's within. And as long as you let that shine and shine bright, life is good. So thank you for watching our Pride episode today. I hope you appreciated it and maybe gotten something out of it. I would really love your feedback. Please subscribe and write a comment if you can. Okay? Have a beautiful day. Bye bye.